Helen of Four Gates by Ethel Carnie. Chapter 3. All on a sweet May morning. All on a sweet May morning, the wood below Four Gates farm, everything a hush, a glimmer, a silence in the heart of leafy green. Swish! The wind stole along, creeping low amongst the fragrant flesh-like stems of the bluebells on the river bank. The flowers trembled, swayed. In the movement their colour seemed to darken, the dancing joy of each hidden heart of burning gold making them change to richer pomp. The bluebells, reflected in the clear river, swayed also. It was a dream within a dream, beauty within beauty. Shh! The wind came softly now, a breath, a sigh. Some exquisite nymph of silence stood, a finger laid across her lips, and whispered, "Hush!" And then the wind came again, jocular, merry, and the million leaves clapped their hands for glee, as if they heard in the distance the pipes of Pan, Pan the wild, the fierce, with his half-animal body and singing soul, Pan the god, who shall not die, whilst one tiny wood is left to murmur through the opal and gold of a May morn. The gladness of a morning wood, who shall tell it? Only Pan, Pan with his wild sweet notes, and the throstle with her swelling rapture, the blackbird with his mellow contralto, the kingfisher with his brilliance, as he darts from under an old mossy bridge, the dark blue of his plumage not seen at all, so swiftly he flies, nothing but a flash of red and gold. Another day has dawned in a world that knows nothing but the present. A flower opens, a flower fades, a bird's song ends, but the rest flow on. There is perfect immortality here, and the birds on the boughs sing denial of the doctrine of pain. Each note a chant for joy of life, of love, of the fulfilment of nature's ends. Whilst all the time the wood glows, a brighter emerald, the grass stirs to a livelier tint, and the bluebells blaze into sapphire. Helen was coming along the twisting path that led from the garden gate down through the trees to the water edge. She was singing. In the light of her day, her haggard, passionate-eyed beauty was more striking. She looked like a Joan of Arc rather than a village belle, a fighter, a listener to voices, yet all she was fighting for was human love. Behind her stepped the dog, nosing her footsteps. At the edge of the river he lay down while she filled the bucket, which she set amongst the bluebells. Then she also sat down, her long arms clasping her knees. Sitting thus in repose, she looked like a longing typified. As the dog whined, she started. It was Martin. He had just finished milking. Amos Tripp had taken the kilts down the hillside, on their way to Brungerley. Scott's eyes were heavy and red for lack of sleep. He had a miserable, draggled appearance. He was weary, worn out. She was fresh from a happy sleep, brought by his unrest. Reaching her, he threw himself down on the grass on the other side the bucket that held the reflections of a branch of flowering currant. They spoke no single word after that one look at each other. That look, it said, "I see you again." Martin lay upon the cool grass, his face turned into it, as though he were half asleep. His first remark seemed inappropriate to the morning. "The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire is a fine book," he said. "I read it till the stars went out. I didn't seem much somehow, nor Four Gates. Before I had seemed all." Helen answered nothing. There was a smile in her eyes. The wind went sighing through the wood. "It's peace here," breathed Martin. "It's struggle," answered Helen. "Just like in the Roman Empire. The fish will want worms, but the worms won't like it." Martin half turned his face from the grass to look at her. "What time is it?" he asked. "Only 6 o'clock yet," she told him. "There's time to go to sleep." "I might sleep all day," he answered drowsily. "I'll sit and wait you," she told him. "In an hour." He looked at her. An hour's rest. Soon the toil of the day would start. 12 hours before he could close his eyes. "If you'll wake me in an hour," he said, "and stay where you are." She smiled consent. He heaved a sigh of relief, drew a deep breath, and closed his eyes. In 2 minutes he was in a dead sleep. Helen sat on the other side of the bucket, watching him. There was a truce between them. She sat and looked at him, drinking her fill of the tired, sallow face. She talked to him in a crooning way, very softly, as a mother might to a child. "You have never to leave me, Martin," she breathed. "Remember, you belong to me. You mustn't be afraid. I wouldn't leave you if you were 10 times mad. You are ugly, Martin. Why should I care? That is not reason. You should not reason. Have I ever asked you to go back generations, Martin, and see that all your ancestors were wholesome and strong and good? You are a coward. My mind condemns you sometimes. And yet you must never leave me, Martin. Never go away where I cannot see you. Do you remember when you came to the farm at first? I like to think you were as lonely as I then. You must never go away. You cannot. I have stopped you for 5 years. You are getting tired. You will see that I am right. I who am nothing but feeling. I, whom you called selfish once. I will not be miserable, Martin. I would sooner die. You cannot take yourself from me. Why did you come at all, if you have to go away again? It is you who are mad, to imagine you can get away from me." Then she sat in silence, listening to the murmur of the river, to the wind in the leaves, and always watching the sleeper, brooding over him. She was pacifying her fear. At the stroke of 7 from the church clock, she woke Martin. He opened his eyes dazedly, blinked, and then said, good-humouredly, "Been there all the time?" She nodded. "It is not often you are good," he said. "I'm tired too," she answered. He rose from the grass, stretched himself, and took hold of the bucket handle, simultaneously with herself. The wind blew her hair against his cheek. It flushed, then paled. The 2 faces were mirrored in the bucket of water, the one tempting, the other struggling. The hour of truce was over. "Why'd you have your hair down?" he growled. She did not answer. There was a look in her eyes as if she were laughing. Her fingers touched his on the cold bucket handle. He let go, and Helen set the bucket down. She turned and walked over to an oak and sat in the bend of the trunk. He came over towards her, slowly, like one who is beaten. "One kiss, then," he said, as one granting a favour. Helen laughed. She held herself proudly. "I can go without it," she said. Martin started. He had never thought of that. The desire to chase that which fled him took possession of him. "You could never withhold what I asked," he prophesied egotistically. She laughed. It was a tantalizing sound. "The old man will be waiting," he said, nodding towards the house. "Helen," he was humble now. The stimulated pride that was only a decoy dropped from her. Their lips met. She clung to him, but he wrenched himself away. They picked up the bucket and proceeded towards the farm. As they reached a knoll, Helen paused. The softer murmur of the river came to them, the chattering of birds, the rustling of the million leaves. The woman's face was paler than usual, her eyes darker. The paleness and the darkness of her gave the suggestion of a passion flower. As she paused, her body swayed as a blossom hurtled by a wind. Martin's look and hers met. His was sombre, veiled, and his mouth compressed into tight, hard lines. "Martin," breathed Helen. Her voice was faint, as though speech were a mockery and a uselessness. "Aye," answered Martin, taking the full weight of the bucket, and moving his glance to a leaf of hawthorn that had fallen into it. The wind went through the hyacinths, the leaves murmured, and the deep undertone of the river came up to them. "How can you fight, crush it down, always?" she asked, wonder in her eyes, her tone. "It," she had said, and her hand had pointed down to the water's edge. She saw a spirit gliding amongst the grey rocks, the whispering rushes, the cuckoo flowers drenched with river spray. A townswoman would have said nature. The countrywoman breathed it, with the perception of the power, the mystery, the glory of the priestess. She had trembled before, like a child. A wondering look was fixed again on Martin's face, full of that question. "I think," said Martin tersely. "I cannot think," she told him simply, gravely, "when I am near you." They went up towards the house of shadow, the house where the old man would be waiting, ghoul-like. Abel Mason had not come down as they drew up to breakfast. There was no sound on the floor above. "They'd better call him, Martin," said Helen, in the tones any daughter of a farmer might use to a manservant. She did not even look at him as she spoke. Her gaze was turned upon the face of the tramp, who was sitting at the table with the easy unconsciousness of one who had a right there. She was taking note of his jaw, his mouth, his eyes, and wondering how long he was staying. Martin rose. "Like the look of me?" queried the tramp boldly, insinuating something into his voice that said man. Boldness was his chief note. That was why he could hold his own in the Doss House, why he would hold his own in a wider world, and one as unscrupulous, if more cultured. Why he hoped to tame Helen, who antagonized him with the fearless something that looked out from her eyes. Helen turned to set the teapot down on the hob before answering his question. She looked at him again. "Happen I do, happen I don't," she said cryptically. "That's a pity," said the tramp, as if he read some hidden and unfavourable meaning in her words. "What difference can it make?" she asked indifferently. "You'll only be here for the day." Was there some cunning attempt to get to know how long he was staying? The tramp could not tell. She could fence as well as himself. "He's tamed me on," he said. "He?" she jerked, and he saw for a moment beyond the veil of her acting. "He's tamed me on for a goodish while," he said calmly. "I expect it's just till we get the fields mown," she said nonchalantly. "Happen," said the tramp darkly. Martin came back and drew up to the table. "Is he coming?" Helen asked him. "He's near answered," said Martin in a perturbed way. "Usually he's down first. It's strange, Helen." Helen looked across at him. "God'll not have given stuff," she said carelessly. "Happen he's gone out. I'll go up and see." She left the room, closing the door after her. "A fine lass," commended the tramp, much as one would admire points in a dog. Martin nodded. "Aye," he answered laconically. They heard Helen coming back. "He's gone out," she said. "He'll have gone to look as the cobblestones hasn't gone off in neat. He goes to look at 'em betimes," turning to the tramp, "and comes back looking like he's been in the company of old Nick. If he's been up to the cobblestones, he'll have a storm when he comes back. He's a bit leet in his top story, you know, so don't be surprised if he tells you he's changed his mind about you staying on to help a goodish while." Martin started as she communicated the fact that the old man had taken Fielding on to work, communicated it in a subtle way that the tramp could not be sure how to take. It looked as if she were afraid of the door opening at any moment, her father coming in a storm, and Martin unaware that he must be careful of his demeanour, as there was another worker in the field. "Aye, we're all a bit touched, we Masons," she went on, covering up her tracks about the warning to Martin. She spoke the awful fact as unemotionally as though she communicated that it was peculiar to the Masons to be born with a longer thumb joint than most people. She faced the phantom, pulled the veil from its face, stared into its awful eyes, and dared it to do its worst. The tramp turned his look from those fearless eyes, that magnificent courage, to the face of Martin Scott. The labourer was looking at Helen with a glance of reluctant admiration. The tramp wondered that any man could be mad enough in his sane fears to think that a mind of such hardihood could be a seed ground for madness. It was as grim a joke as any he'd ever heard, even in the doss house. He could have laughed aloud to think of it all. Martin's fear, old Mason's hatred, Helen's love, all playing into the hands of the doss house tramp, the man at the bottom, who was going to get up from down under and climb up, up and up, over the dolts whose indifference had pinned him fast in a world whose limitations had ever irritated him, giving him no scope for his broad-winged ambition to get the best out of life. It was just at this moment that the door was flung open. It banged terrifically after the old man, silent, grim, looking as if he'd been out all night. He crossed to his chair in the ingle-nook. The dog got up and crept towards his feet, then licked his boots dubiously. The next moment, Nero flew to the other side of the kitchen. "Give us me breakfast," he growled at Helen. He might have been waiting hours for it. "It's ready," she answered. "No back answers," he commanded. She was mute. "And don't turn stupid," he yelled. "Oh, by the gods!" She met his infuriated eyes calmly. He meant trouble. "Will you have milk or your porridge?" she queried. "Don't I always have milk?" he asked. She poured a generous supply on his dish without answering. "Reach it here," he commanded with a snarl. She handed it to him. He flung the contents of the dish behind the fire with a jeering laugh and handed Helen the empty vessel. She took it calmly, set it on the table, and sat down to finish her breakfast. For 2 minutes there was silence in the kitchen. Martin and the tramp went on with their meal. Helen, too, ate with a callousness that showed of long usage to such scenes. Her eyes had a green glow. The tramp caught a look of warning that she flushed across to Martin. It said, "Be careful, we are in his hands." Martin Scott sat with his impassive look stronger than ever. The tramp had yet seen it. Once more, as on innumerable occasions, he was to see Helen bullied. The hand that held the spoon shook. Again Helen looked at him, at the look with its strange absence of feeling that meant the keenest feeling. A gleam of fear shone in her eyes. She hurried to give him his cup of tea, and taking it round to him, touched his hand as if by accident. He stirred in his chair and cleared his throat. "Haven't I to have any breakfast this morning?" shouted old Mason. "Leave Martin alone, lass. Get summat cooked." She was looking at him, feeling that he was coming round to Martin in his attack, and eager to draw the storm down on herself, rather than risk a combat between the two. She showed a stubborn front. "I'll have it ready soon," she answered sullenly. "Now," commanded her father. She got up from the table and got the bacon sizzling. "There's a fence broken down, Martin," said Mason. "What's the meaning on it?" There was despotism in the farmer's voice, the despotism of a man who holds another man's living and something still dearer in his hand. The woman bending over the pan on the fire turned swiftly. Her father read a fear in her eyes, the first fear he had seen, the fear that he and Martin would quarrel and that he would send Martin away. I'll see to it. I didn't know it were broken down," said the iron-proud man at the table. "Tha'd better," said Mason insultingly. Again there was silence. Martin had not spoken. He had crushed his pride back into his heart. He soon pushed his chair back and went out. Helen followed on the excuse of emptying the teapot. From his seat the tramp could see that she crossed over to the dark figure bent over the broken fence. There was a humility in her attitude. Martin raised his head, conscious of it, conscious that she realized what it cost him to tramp his pride underfoot. The two shadows met on the sunny field. Then Helen returned. "Tha's been a long time emptying that pot," said her father. "I went to look at the sow," she lied. Never in all his life had Fielding Day heard her lie that sounded so truthfully. She lied with the magnitude, the thoroughness of her nature, yet even as he looked into her unflinching eyes, he knew that to lie came hard to her. She did it because she must. The bacon was set out on the table, and the old man drew up to it. He had barely eaten 2 mouthfuls when he jumped up from his chair, mumbled something about the bacon being burnt, and then he had picked up a knife, and Helen had flown to the other side of the table, as one well practised in such agility. She watched her father's movements with the alertness of a cat. His face was wild in its rage, his eyes glaring so fiercely they blazed. But whether the look of madness he wore was real, or cunningly assumed to cause terror, the tramp could not tell. "Now Martin's not here to come between this time," he chuckled, moving slowly round. She also moved, keeping the door at her back. Her face was no paler than its wont. She looked at the menacing knife, then at the wild eyes, but no cry left her lips for help. Her one idea was to keep the door at her back. The old man seemed to read this idea in her eyes. It was a combat between them, his one desire to get her away from the door, hers to stay there. A swift movement and a nearer lunge of the knife drove her a little further than she had thought, giving the old man the advantage. "Aren't afraid of me now?" he cried. "Hee hee! Where's thy courage now? Call on Martin, he's only 2 fields away." "You dursn't murder me," she said, smiling. "You'd swing for it. Did you do like this with my mother?" A change came over the face grinning into hers. The knife slackened in his hand. "Don't talk of thy mother to me," he snarled. "Why doesn't I call on Martin? Isn't he the bravest lad in the world? He dare face out at all, Martin Scott. Shout on him." He saw by her face that this was just what she did not dare do. To call Martin in was to court what she feared, the snapping of the last link of the chain, of Martin going away, of separation that would be as cruel as death. He read her agony in her face now. He gloated upon it. Pang for pang he was getting from Tomlinson's daughter, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, as the great law went. He mocked her with the weak indecision of Martin Scott, with the memory of the lad who had dropped her hand from his all those years ago, with the knife shining nearer, yet nearer, and something in his look that made the tramp recall with a shudder the words that he had spoken so short a time ago. "I get afraid lest I kill her and lose my revenge." The pale face grew paler now, yet the tramp could not think it was fear. The breath of the old man was now upon the white cheek. The 2 pairs of eyes looked into each other. "Now," said Abel Mason, "now wilt ta defy me again?" She uttered no word. The coldness of the knife was at her throat. Something primitive stirred in her as that coldness pressed her warm throat. She flattened herself against the wall, her thin arms extended on each side of her. She shrunk more at the feeling of that primeval terror than at the knife itself. Her eyes darkened, her face paled almost to death hue, her lips parted, and the old man stood there, laughing in his horrible way. "Why don't you kill me and have done with it?" she said in a low, penetrating voice. "Kill me, kill me, kill me." Again the old man laughed. The laughter seemed to goad Helen to distraction. Kill me," she said fearlessly, "and have done with it." "What, die so young? Go away," he jeered, "where thou'll ne'er see Martin again, nor the moors thou loves, nor the sun." "I'm not flayed," she said. "Why don't ye strike? I'm not flayed. Ye shall never make me flayed. Never. Not whatever you do." With a swift, unexpected movement, she snatched the knife from him. Her hair showered about her face as she did so, and then a quick ear caught a sound she feared, the footstep of Martin Scott. Before she could move, he entered the doorway, saw her, with the almost fanatical light shining in her eyes, inspired by her rising up against that terror of feeling the coldness of the knife at her throat. It was not difficult to believe her the branch of a mad family now, with that ecstasy upon her death-like face, her dishevelled hair about her, and the shining knife in her hand. "Martin," she gasped, flinging the thing away from her. He looked bewildered, horrified. "What?" he began. The word died away in his throat. She looked at him, saw the dull horror stealing into his eyes, and realized his thought. Martin thought she was mad. Martin, whom she had not called, because to do so might imperil his staying at the farm. "Doesn't she look bonny?" jeered the old man, who was sitting in his chair in the ingle-nook. "Doesn't she look a reet Mason? He! I'm proud of thee, Helen, proud of thee." "Martin," half-sobbed Helen. Before she could say more, the man had turned. He was rushing away, to shut out the sight of that look he had seen on her face as he had opened the door. The look that was of the courage of martyrs, defying animal fear of the knife. The look of superhuman mind which she had taken for the wildness of madness. "Martin, I'm not," she murmured. The words stuck in her throat. She sat down by the window. She was not weeping, only her eyes were closed as one enduring intensest suffering. Just at that moment the door was reopened. Martin Scott had turned back. He looked at her. He had forgotten the old man, the tramp, the outsider, everything but Helen. He walked over to her side. "Helen," he said. There was a look upon him of one snapping a fetter. She looked up with a sudden joy that was tragic. "I'd only taken the knife off him," she said, pointing to her father. Martin accepted the explanation. Whether it fully accounted to him for the look he had seen on her face could not be told. "Ne'er mind," he said, as a man who has made up his mind to something. "Ne'er mind, Helen." He took her trembling hand in his, standing with clear resolve shining through him, a village hamlet who at last had left the inaction of thought. She looked at him. There were tears in her eyes, tears flung from the agony of an overjoyed heart. "Martin," she murmured. Old Mason had half risen in his chair. There was panic upon his face, in his blue eyes, in his attitude. "Fool," he jeered. "Steve Mason, her great-uncle, killed his 3 little childer just because 'twere dark, and he'd seen a woman go by th' window with a white blouse on." Martin was looking at Helen. "She got that knife to me," said Abel Mason. Martin still took no notice. "Ne'er mind, Helen," he said tenderly. "Ne'er mind whether it's true or whether it's not. It's all in a lifetime. I'll stand by thee." Old Mason was listening intently, watching Martin Scott's face. The panic faded somewhat from his own. He reseated himself in his chair, filled his pipe with tobacco, and winked towards Fielding Day. There was the sound of steps coming up the flagged garden path. "The post," said Abel Mason. "Open door, Martin." Martin Scott moved slowly towards the door, took the letter, closed the door. Then he handed it to Mason. "Read it, Martin," commanded Abel Mason. Something passed away from Martin, something passed into him, some subtle change, as he tore the orange note open. But Helen did not notice it. As a sun worshipper might stand in ecstasy after any eclipse, she sat believing, because she had hoped so much, clinging because she did not dare but hope, though hope had cost her so dear. Martin read it silently. He murmured the words over to the old man. "They'll have to take another journey," said Abel, as one reluctantly issuing a command. "Happen it'll be at last. If that telegram's ought to go be, she won't last long. It's not one of the pleasantest tasks, I know." Helen started from her dream of happiness. She leapt from her chair and across to the hearth. There was something almost menacing in the movement, in the look. "You'll know and send Martin," she gasped. "You can't send Martin. You shan't send him. what Joe was sending for. Go yourself, or send me. I'm not flayed. Let me go. Let me see it. Whatever it's like, it'll not scare me. Let me go. Let me see my Aunt Millie. I'll go, decided Martin hurriedly. I'll go. I'm sorry thou's to go, Martin, said the old man. Reet sorry, but there's nobody else for it, and I want to know everything is done for it can be done. I'll bring back full words, Martin. Aye, said Martin. Aye, I'll not be long, Helen. His glance met the challenge of hers. In his was the recognition of a certain danger, which he would face and conquer, of voices of fear that would call to him, to which he must not turn to listen. In her eyes was a look of hope, of trust, that was sadder than despair. She went and sat by the window, staring at the blowing green stuff in the garden. 2 yellow butterflies were courting in the sunshine. She sat there until Martin was ready. Maybe I'll get back tonight, Martin lad, called the old man, as he stood with the door half open, the sunlight streaming across the sandy floor, a scent from the wide outside world stealing in. I shall come back tonight, sure, said Martin. He paused, waiting for something. Helen rose from her seat by the window and followed him out. The tramp walked over to the window, concealed himself behind the shutters, and watched. Slopping and slavering about one another, asked the old man sarcastically. She's pinning him a bit of lad's love in his coat, reported Fielding. The old man took a slow, luxurious puff at his pipe. He laughed. Lad's love, lad's love. The tramp came and sat in the chair in the other ingle-nook. Thou looks like a November morning, laughed old Mason. There's naught to be downcast about. Thy 2,000 is safe. Martin's done. What he was saying to Helen were what he felt he ought to say, so he said it at last. To a more and half acting. He were deceiving himself. 'Twere the reaction of seeing her with knife and that mad loot. He's been caving him for some time. A man can only stand so much. There's a terrible deal of imagination about Martin Scott. I saw it in him when he come here a little lad, and he'll go away, and the place will call and call him, and he'll hear it calling, till he dies. Did to see how his hand shoot this morning? His nerves is going. I've put extra work on him and shifted his sleep into that dark room with photos of mad folk in it, and Helen's hung there among 'em, among my folk. It's not much sleep he gets. It's all told. He's done. That were his last struggle this morning, and now he's gone to see Millie. She's terrible, Millie is, and by that telegram, she's worse than ever she were, and he hasn't slept none for a long time, and how he saw Helen by the door with a knife will all come back when he sees Millie, and he'll remember that mad woman he happened to see when he were a child. Sometimes I think if it hadn't been for that memory, fresher because he were a child, he'd have just snapped his fingers at it all. At the white gate a woman stood, waving her hand to a man with a sprig of fragrant lad's love in his coat. When he had gone, she did not turn into the house where the 2 men sat. It was as though she could not face its oppression again. She was waiting for great news and must wait outside. She sat down by the water's edge and watched the wagtails fly to and fro. Then she fell to thinking of Martin, of just where he would be by now. I'm going to be happy, happy, she avowed passionately to the flowers. You're happy, growing where you were meant to be. I'm going to be happy like other folk. In a few hours Martin will be back. I'm going to be happy. Her eyes were full of the burning tears of one who has seen heaven through a loophole in hell. For the first time she had the blasphemous feeling that it might be better not to love. She knew it for blasphemy. Opening her dim eyes, she stared across a blaze of colour that was life, a green slope laughing in the sunshine, and saw a water wagtail fly down to the water with its funny little waggling movement, its white marks gleaming in the radiance. It was beautiful, with all its struggle, That world of nature she knew. She was part of it, of the mould, and the last year's leaves, and the moist bluebells. "I can't stand much more," she murmured, "but I've thought that so often. I'm so strong, so very strong." Then she looked again at the beauty of the world. She thought of the days when, as a child, as a lonely girl, she had soaked all that beauty into herself. After Martin had come, it had never been the same. Human feelings had made her see less in the woods, the moors, the hedgerows. It had been a passion before Martin came. To find a bird's nest had been heaven. It was still sweet, but her pantheism had become humanism. Martin had even spoilt that. She rose from the grass and went slowly upwards to the farm. She had not been in the wood more than 10 minutes. It seemed 10 hours. All the time she was waiting, as one between life and death, for the great sign. She was in the hollow of Martin's hand, subject to every wind of circumstance that blew across his sky, and the loneliness, the inhuman apartness of the sky, the shuddering feeling that it stretched over a world cast into being by a blind chance, even as her life, as Martin's, as the little wagtails by the river was cast, terrified her. She turned and ran staggeringly up through the wet, tangled grass, up to the horror-shrouded farm, where she had suffered so much, running to the company of those two whom she hated, anywhere away from that great lonely void. The grey shadow of loneliness clutched her. The only thing she feared clutched at her. She was nothing, less than nothing, less than the little wagtail by the river. If she lost her mate, there was no meaning behind anything.